Okay, in this tutorial, we're going to first talk about the gradient tool, and then we're going to talk about the Pathfinder tool. The Pathfinder tool, I think, just behind perhaps the pen tool right here, is one of the most important tools to kind of understand in Adobe Illustrator here. So starting things off with the gradient tool, you can create a shape. And we could also do this if we were to draw a path with the pen tool, any of these options will work for this. And to what we want to do is we want to change out this black box that has a small white stroke into a gradient right here. So first I'm going to click on the stroke and turn that off. Click back on the main fill layer right here. And then if you find this box right here, this is the gradient panel. You can also find it by, if you can't locate it over here on the side, you can go to Window and then down to Gradient, and then it'll pull up for you right here. And so there's three core gradients that you can experiment with here in Adobe Illustrator. And so you can see that I have the selection tool turned on, so that's V, and I have my shape selected right here. And I have linear, radial, and then freeform. So I'm going to show all three of those. And to apply a gradient to it, you just have to click on whichever one of these boxes you want to start with here. So I'm going to do the linear first. So you can click on that. And so it creates a linear gradient from left to right here. And you can see that that's highlighted right here. So white, gray to black right there with 100% opacity. This is the angle in which the gradient takes place. So right now it's left to right. If I switch it to 90 degrees, it'll go up to down. And if I do 45 degrees, it'll go at an angle like that. And additionally, we have this button right here, which is the edit gradient button. And what this will do, and this is true for all three of the gradients, is we can make it so that these little sliders right here show up as well on the object or the shape itself. So if I press that, you can see that the slider is here, but it also works over here. And so what is the slider? So with the slider, if I move this way, so I'm selecting the white, you can see that the white takes up more of a percentage of the overall gradient right here. And if I do it the opposite way, the black will take up a larger percentage right there. But since I pressed the edit gradient button that was there just a moment ago, I can also make that change directly on the object, which can be really helpful a lot of times because you want to be keeping your eyes over here while you're making adjustments. So you can see right here, we have these two main handles right here, but we also have kind of the center point right here. And so that can also do a nice shift right there. Oops. So that little mistake I had is kind of what I want to talk about next right here, which is if I want to change the color of the gradient right here. First, let's just click on this black dot right here. So I'm going to double click it right there. And then this panel is going to show up. And we can do things like the eyedropper tool right here, but usually what I like to do, there we go. So you can do the eyedropper tool right there. You can also see that I can double click and I also have my swatches right here. So this is kind of a reason why one of the reasons I like to have swatches right here is I kind of have my color palette set up for my whole project right here. So rather than kind of having to move my screen around and stuff like that, I can just click right on this. Oops. Pull it off. So I can just click right on this and then immediately have access to my palette right here. So I can do that right there. On the other side, I can double click on that and change it over there. Additionally, I can add gradient points right here. You can see my cursor. I'm hovering it underneath the slider right there, and it's got a little plus next to it. So if I click right there, that's going to add a new point in the gradient slider right here. And again, I can just double click it and change it to one of the colors on my palette right there. And you can make this really complicated if you want to. Double click. And I'll choose that one right there. And if you try one of these and you don't like it, all you need to do is just click it, hold it, and then drag it downward, and it's going to delete right there. So you can remove gradient points just by clicking down and shifting it around that way right there. So that's the linear gradient. Next up, we have the radial gradient. So this is really good on circular objects, particularly. So I have the edit gradient button still selected right here. To kind of remove the edit gradient slider that was on there, I just pressed V or the select button right there and then click off. And when I click back onto the object again, you can see that that button's back again. So if I want to re-enable it, I can just press that button once more. So to show the radial gradient, let's switch things over to, I was working with a rectangle and I'm going to work with an ellipse right here. So I'm going to hold shift and drag it on. And this time I'm just going to add the gradient to the solid object right here by clicking on the gradient panel. This time instead of the linear, I'm going to do radial. And so this is what the radial gradient looks like. And you can see there's kind of some similar controls right here. It's much more the same, you know, in terms of the way these sliders work right here. If you press the edit gradient button, you can have the controls directly on the object itself right there. And I can add points to it. So if I just double click, I can have it kind of morph between some different colors right here. I have my in-between points. So these little slider in-between points show up on the top part of the bar right here. And one thing you can also do is I'm clicking on the bar itself and you can see I'm able to kind of move my gradient around. So if you see right here, so I clicked on the bar to move it. And then if I click right here, you can see I can scale it that way. I can scale it uniformly if I grab that handle right there. And so between grabbing the bar and then grabbing these different handles right here, you can start to kind of work on making it look like instead of a sphere is having the radial highlight come straight on, you can start to work on making it look like there is light coming from a light source, maybe from this angle up here to the top up there. So change it right there. Oops, my hand slipped on that. There you go. So you can see with the radial, that's not perfect right there, but you can kind of begin to see how you can make it look like there is a light source coming from, you know, this angle up here, right? So again, I did that just by have the object selected and then the edit gradient and then zoom in on that. And just this little handle right here. So the same as this little handle right there, but it's just there. And there's these different sliders do different things right here. So you could kind of squish it too, or have it get disproportional. So you have a lot of control over the radial gradient when you press the edit gradient button on that. So let's delete that one. And let's do one more here. So this is going to be the freeform gradient button, which is one that I really like a lot. So I just have a solid object right here. This time it's white. And that's this one right here. So it's the freeform gradient tool. And so right off, what's happening here is that edit gradient button is really important on this one, or is kind of like, it should kind of automatically happen right here. And what happens is there's these different points right here where you can kind of change the colors and you can shift this around. So you can really customize this a lot. So to demonstrate this, I'm just going to double click on this little sphere of influence in the gradient. So double click. And you can see I can kind of manually choose a color like this. I can use the eyedropper tool and pick a color from somewhere down here. Additionally, I can do swatches and pick a color from my color palette right here. So, you know, I could pick like green or something like that. You can see I can move it around. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spheres of kind of influence happening right here. If you want to delete one, you can just drag it off and then it's gone. You can scale them up and down just by clicking on this handle right there. So that's kind of scaling it up, scaling it back down again. And if you want this, like for instance, this black to be less severe, you can kind of have other spheres kind of encroach on its kind of territory a little bit right there, or you could double click it and kind of choose a lighter color right there. So there's a ton of control that you get with this form of the gradient tool right here. And so all I'm doing on this is I'm just clicking on these, moving them around. If I want to change the color of one of these, I double click, choose the color from any of these options right here. And then additionally, so I press V right there. And so pressing V lets you kind of see it as it's going to appear to the viewer right here. But you can see right here I have the edit gradient button, and then that'll enable this again. And so what was I saying? You can move it, you can change the color by double clicking right here. You can change the handle right here to kind of have it have like a soft fade like this, and this kind of increases its sphere of influence, but also kind of creates a harder fade between the different other gradient points right here. And yeah, and so something else that's really nice about this, and you can kind of see this happening with this character's eyes down here, is this eye right here I created first, and then this eye I created second right here. And something that was nice is I created a you know, semi complicated gradient right here for this shape. So if I click on the edit gradient tool, you can see I have 1, 2, 3 points where the gradient is affecting to kind of give the eye that effect right there. And instead of having to recreate it from scratch, and I'll show this over here on this eye right here real quick, is if I select this eye right here, which is empty, and I want to have it have a similar gradient as one of these other two, is I can just do the eyedropper tool. So that's eye, and I can just click in there, and then look at that. It just kind of takes the same gradient and applies it to this object right here. And so that's nice because I kind of have the spheres of influence right here, but also the same colors are being used. So I can still fine tune it, but it's kind of giving me a starting point that's based off of that other gradient right there, which is a really nice time saver. So that is the gradient tool. And so next up, what I want to show is the Pathfinder tool. And then after that, I'm going to show how you can kind of put these both together for use in your projects here. So the Pathfinder tool is incredibly important here in, oops, my hand slipped there, is incredibly important in Illustrator. And so to demonstrate it, I'm going to create a rectangle right here. I'm just going to give it some soft edges right there. And for the color, one thing here, just when you're picking colors right here, if you double click in here, you're going to choose the colors manually right here. You can also kind of go into this menu. You know, you can find your color swatches in here too. So like we have these ones down here, but it can be a little difficult to decipher for me sometimes. And so sometimes I'll pick colors from there, but also you can go up here. And if you know you want to use your swatches, it's kind of lined up that way, which for me is a little visually easier to read. That might just be me though. So I'm going to create this. And then I'm also going to use the pen tool to create another shape right here. And you can see, I'm just trying to make it a distinct shape right here. Okay, and then I'm going to make this a different color. Okay, so we have shape 1 right here, and then shape 2, or sorry, shape 1 right here and shape 2 right there. I'm going to move these over to a new layer just so that we can see what's happening clearly with the Pathfinder tool. So the Pathfinder tool, it's like the clipping mask tool, which is something that is shown in a future video here, and I might try to touch on it here in this video a little bit too if I have time. And what the Pathfinder tool allows you to do is it allows you to kind of, if you want to make a change to the shape right here, you can create another shape and use it as a cookie cutter to kind of cut into it right here. And there's all different kinds of combinations and things that you can do with it here. Super helpful for Illustrator. It's really helpful in character design. So for instance, when I was kind of making this shadow that's right here, the shape that's highlighted right now, I was able to have it kind of fit the outline of the eye by creating a shape that kind of went outside of the eye and then using the Pathfinder tool to use the eye to cookie cutter that shadow so that I had this line created within it. So if that wasn't clear, I can, this will hopefully clarify what I was trying to say there a little bit better. So we have these two shapes. This is the Pathfinder window right here. If you can't find it, it's window and then go down to Pathfinder. This is in alphabetical order right there. So let's just kind of go through these a little bit. So we have essentially, if I select that and then I hold shift and select that shape. So that shape and then that shape right there. If I press this button right here, that is called the unite button. So it's going to unite two shapes together. So that might make it a little bit clearer if I kind of do it like this. Let's just imagine I'm making like an elk or something, and this is the horn, and I want to combine it to the character. Is I can click that, then click that, and then press unite, and then they become one shape right there. Alternatively, so there's different options in here. Each of these do different things. I have this option right here, which is the minus front. So if I press minus front, you can see that the purple shape right here that I use with the pen tool is on top of the shape right here. And so the minus front one is going to minus the front one and use it to kind of cut a unique shape into that other shape that's beneath it. And you can see with that button right there that this used to be two shapes right here, and now it's one path. So that's that one right there. Let's do another one. So we'll click this. We have this option right here, which does the opposite. This is called intersect. So it's going to take the, or I guess it's not the exact opposite. This is going to take the areas where this shape and this shape are Venn diagramming each other or intersecting, and you can kind of see it in the icon right there. So you can see it's whatever areas are overlapping is what's created. So it's two shapes into one. Then finally, we have this one right here, which is exclude, which is the opposite, where it combines it into a group right here. So we have this path right here, and then this path right here, and then the area that's cut out is whatever was intersecting the two. And so you can kind of imagine using these four tools right here can be incredibly helpful when you're, if you think about like logo design and things like that, that this is used constantly for that kind of work. And it can also be used for character design, which I'm going to show here in just a second. So that's the top four right there. And usually you'll see me using those the most, but we have these ones down here. So the Pathfinder tools right here. And I'm going to touch on these real quick here. The main difference between these is you notice that all these, except for this one right here, when I use the Pathfinder, the shape modes, it took two objects right here, two paths, and combined it into one thing. And so let's just do the same thing where we select these two objects, and then I'm going to do this option right here, which is called divide. So I click it, and it looks like nothing happened at first. But if we look over here in the layer menu, it created a group, and you can see it divided those two objects into three. So I'm going to hide the visibility of that one, and that one. So you can see right there, that kind of gives you almost a jack of all trades where it just cuts it into three entirely different pieces. And, you know, you might choose to take one slice and move it around, you know, select this middle slice, you know, there's just kind of, you have more that you can kind of do with it right there. So that's that option right there. Again, that's the first one we're moving left to right. Let's see here. So we have this one right here. So this one's called trim. And so again, looks like it didn't do anything right here. But you can see right there that this shape that's underneath right here, it was initially a rounded off rectangle, and then we have that kind of cut out happening right there. And again, it puts it into a group. So both of these two, it didn't look like anything happened at first, but you just have to look into the group and then you'll see it. So next up, we have this option right here, which is merge. So merge, let's see what happens here. So similar kind of result right here, where it kind of cut into it this time. And then I'm just pressing edit undo to come back. Next up we have, oh wait, here we are. So we're at crop right there. So that is really similar to this intersect button, and actually the icons are similar, but the main difference here is that we have the group right here, and it kind of keeps the path right here for this. So you just kind of get some added materials left behind with these. This is kind of the most typical difference that you'll find between this. And then finally, we have the outline, which is an interesting one. You can kind of see right here. I don't really use this one a lot. I'm sure there's a good reason to use it at times here, but you can see that it kind of creates a remnants like an outline outside of the shapes right there. And so these are definitely helpful things to explore with right here. And so let me just kind of show you how I kind of approach shading a character, particularly if they have like a two-tone shadow, which is what you would see with animated characters a lot of the time. So there's kind of a gradient happening here, which I'm demonstrating, but you can see there's this kind of hardline shadow and then the overall shape. So let me go to this eye layer right here, and I'm just going to call this eye 3. And so if I were to create a shadow on this, and this is how you'll kind of see my process and how to use the Pathfinder tool for character design right here. So I'm going to select this, And you can see this isn't a true black. This is kind of a darker greenish blue from my palette. And so just by selecting it, it's now, when I use the pen tool, it's going to use the same kind of line work right here. And I'm going to work on the shadow that's kind of drawn in right there in my reference drawing. So I'm just going to click right there, click and hold right here with the pen tool. I'm holding spacebar to move that, and then clicking up here. And then on the outside, I don't really worry, you know, I can draw all kinds of shapes right there. It doesn't matter. It's going to get cropped out in the end right here. And so I have these different shapes right here under here. So I have the base right here, which is just a circle. And then I have these inner kind of components right there. And then I have the shadow right here. And so I'm going to click in that shadow. And so here's my process right here. So with the base color, I'm going to use the eyedropper tool and pick one of the other base colors that I've already created for the eye, which was that gradient right there. So we have that right there. And what I'm going to actually do is I could probably get away with using some of these Pathfinder options down there. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select this base. I'm going to press Command C, then Shift Command V to paste it in place. So the other thing you could do to do that is you could go up, select it down here, go up to Edit, copy, then Edit, paste in place right there. And what it does is it just makes a duplicate base right there, one on top of the other right there, which you can see right here. And so now I'm going to select the shadow, and I can already chose this color right here for my shadow before. So to replicate it, I'm just going to use the eyedropper tool again, click in there. And so you can kind of start to see what's going to happen right here. But I have this outside area out here where my cursor is that I want to remove. And so I'm going to use the Pathfinder tool to get rid of that. So I'm going to select the shadow first, then the base, go to my Pathfinder window right here. Then it should be this button right here, the intersect button is what I want. So the third one to the left on the top, click that. And you can see that it automatically cuts out that outside kind of area that I don't need right there. And one thing that's happening here too is, which wasn't really shown yet in this video, is with the shadow right here, the shadow color that I was using on these past ones, if I click on the transparency window right here, you can see that I have it set to be a multiply, and it's at 33% opacity right here. So if I were to take it to 100% opacity, it gets darker, and then normal. And so that's kind of the original color. And you can see that it's kind of overlaying on top of my stroke in an awkward way on the edges right there. And so that's why I have it set to multiply. And then I have the opacity. Oops, I need to make sure it's selected. So that's why I have it set to multiply right there. You can see that's kind of changing the color. And then the opacity is at 33. And the multiply, in this instance, these different overlay modes can kind of help kind of hide areas like that are overlapping each other. And so that's kind of how you can use the Pathfinder tool for your character. Let's kind of show that one more time right here. So I have this nose, so I'm going to use maybe a light pink for the core nose, and then for these nostrils, I'll use maybe this darker pink down here, which I think should hopefully be in my palette up here. So right here, I'm going to select my nose, and you can see I have my own layer group over here. So I have my base nose. And then for the fill, I want it to have I want all these to kind of have that stroke still. That's kind of part of the design of the character right here. So if I did the eyedropper tool on the nose, you can see, oh, no, well, I thought it was going to get rid of the stroke. I guess it didn't. But sometimes it will, at least in my past experience. Maybe I'm misremembering that. But I can also pick the color right here. And for the nostrils, I'm just going to, let's try that eyedropper here. Okay, now it does it. It gets rid of the stroke, go figure. So I'll do the darker pink for that. Then I'm going to select this shape right here, darker pink for that. And so now what I'm going to do is, and I might have to fiddle with this just for a second here, but I'm going to select this nostril here and then the nose. And let me think here. So the Pathfinder tool, if I do So you can see I always have to mess with this a little bit. Here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the nose. I'm going to press Command C, then press Shift Command V to paste it in place right there. Drag that back down. And then let's just use that this one right here, because that's the one. This is the one that I just, in my own mind, I end up using the most because I just kind of am the most comfortable with it right there. So you can see right there that I selected this nostril right here. Then I selected that duplicate of the base nose right here. Then I press this button right here, the intersect one. And you can see I trimmed that nostril to fit exactly with the nose. And then I'm going to do the same thing again for this bottom one. So I'm going to select my base nose, Command C, or edit copy, and then Shift Command V or edit, paste in place. So now I'll have another duplicate right there. I'll select the right nostril right here, and then that duplicate of the base nose that I have right there. And then I'll do the same thing again. And there we go. Within this group, I have the nose cropped out right there. And so that's why you see me kind of I have like a layer like this where I have the base shape, and then a layer like this where it might be like the shaded region right there. And so I try to be really precise while I'm inside the object, creating that line. But when I'm out here, I know that's going to get cropped out. So I'm pretty loose with it out there. And that's kind of the basis I use for a lot of this creature design and stuff like that in Illustrator a lot of the time. And so you can see right here, I have my eye remaining right here. So I'm not going to use the Pathfinder tool for this, but just for this color right here, remember I can eyedrop a gradient right there so I can get it. And so once you create, if you have repeatable things in your design, the eyedropper tool can be really helpful just to kind of quickly take a drawing that you have and kind of bring it into the realm of color here. So Pathfinder tool, incredibly important. So we went over that today, and then we went over gradients. So these gradients can be really nice for if you're trying to go for, especially for like modern designs and things like that, because a lot of, especially if you look at like, this is for like the cereal box assignment, and a lot of these cereal box characters are inspired a lot in terms of their look development by like Pixar films and things like that. And so the designers are trying to use like gradients and things like that to make the character seem as kind of rich and 3D kind of as possible. But you can also create really nice character designs without the gradient tool. And sometimes the gradient tool can be like a little bit of a crutch. And sometimes it can be nice to kind of work, especially if you're kind of going for a 2D animation. So just like a hand-drawn animation look, the way that hand-drawn animators typically work is more in hard lines and clearly divided colors between palettes rather than gradients. So you can create really nice designs with kind of sticking with this kind of design element down here, where you can see I don't have any gradients happening, and it's a lot of two-tone kind of design components happening right there.